Hello travellers, my name is Damien. Welcome to the Lore Keeper. Tonight we journey into the deep history of Middle-earth, before the Fellowship formed, before the War of the Ring began, before anyone knew a king still lived. There was a wanderer, a ranger who walked alone through forgotten lands. For 87 years Aragorn travelled. He walked over 50,000 miles across Middle-earth, from the frozen north to deserts where the stars were strange. Tonight we follow those footsteps. We trace those long, quiet journeys. This is a story for rest, for sleep, for peace. Let your mind wander with him across ancient roads, through empty ruins and living cities, across mountains and plains and endless horizons. Close your eyes, settle into comfort, and let us begin. For 87 years before claiming his throne, Aragorn walked over 50,000 miles across Middle-earth. He travelled from the frozen wastes of the north to the scorching deserts of Far Harad. In those distant southern lands, even the stars appeared strange and unfamiliar. This is the story of those long journeys. The story of a man who became a king by first learning every path, every ruin, every forgotten corner of the realm he would one day rule. In the year 2931 of the Third Age, a child came to Rivendell. His name was Aragorn, son of Arathorn. His father had died in the wild, killed by orcs near the Gladden Fields. The child was only 2 years old. His mother, Gilraen, brought him to the last homely house. She could not protect him alone in the wilderness. The enemies of the Dunedain were many. Elrond, the Lord of Rivendell, took the boy into his household. Elrond had seen many ages pass. He had been herald to Gil-galad in the Second Age. He had stood at the siege of Barad-dûr. He had watched kingdoms rise and fall. Now he took responsibility for this child, heir of Isildur. The child's true name and lineage were kept secret. He was called Estelle, which means hope in the Sindarin tongue. Only Elrond and Gilraen knew the truth. The other elves of Rivendell knew only that he was a child of the Dunedain, a distant kinsman, orphaned, in need of shelter. They asked no questions. Elves understood the value of silence. The last homely house became his home. Rivendell sat in a hidden valley west of the misty mountains. The Brunnen River ran through it, falling in multiple waterfalls. Stone arches rose above courtyards filled with autumn leaves. Gardens surrounded the main house, filled with flowers that bloomed even in winter. Elvish magic preserved them. Water fell continuously from fountains carved in the shapes of stars and leaves. The sound of that water was constant day and night. It filled the halls and courtyards with gentle music. Cool mountain air drifted down from the misty mountains. The air was clean, scented with pine and snow. In spring, apple blossoms added their perfume. In summer, roses grew in every garden. In autumn, leaves turned gold but did not die. In winter, snow fell softly but never lasted long in the valley. Estelle grew slowly, as the Dunedain do. The blood of Númenor ran in his veins, though diluted by many generations. Still, it gave him longer life than ordinary men. He aged at perhaps half the rate of common folk. At 10 years, he looked 6. At 20, he looked barely 15. He studied in halls lined with books older than kingdoms. The Library of Rivendell contained texts from the First Age, scrolls in languages no longer spoken, histories of realms that existed before the sun rose. The smell of old parchment filled those rooms. Dust floated in shafts of afternoon light that came through high windows. The windows were shaped like stars, casting star patterns on the stone floors. Elrond taught him the history of the Eldar and the Edain. The Eldar were the elves who had journeyed to Valinor in ancient days. The Edain were the 3 houses of men who had allied with elves in the First Age. From the Edain came the Númenóreans. From the Númenóreans came the Dúnedain. Why Estelle learned this lineage carefully. He learned of Númenor, the island kingdom that sank beneath the sea. It had been a gift from the Valar to the Edain after the First Age. For thousands of years it had flourished. Its people had lived 300 years. Its ships had sailed all the seas. Its cities had been marvels of craft and beauty. But pride had corrupted the Númenóreans. They had rebelled against the Valar. They had sailed to Valinor with war in their hearts. The Valar had called upon Ilúvatar, the One. Númenor had been broken and drowned beneath the waves. Only the faithful had escaped. Elendil and his sons, Isildur and Anarion. He learned of Elendil and Isildur, who founded the kingdoms of Arna and Gondor. They had brought 7 ships to Middle-earth. They had established new realms for their people. Arna in the north, ruled by Isildur. Gondor in the south, ruled by Anarion. The brothers had stood together against Sauron. He learned of the ring that Isildur failed to destroy. The War of the Last Alliance had ended Sauron's power. Isildur had cut the ring from Sauron's hand. He should have destroyed it in the fires of Mount Doom, but he had claimed it as his own, and the ring had betrayed him, leading to his death in the Gladden fields. The ring had been lost for thousands of years. These were heavy histories for a child, but Estelle absorbed them all. Winter came to Rivendell every year. Snow covered the peaks surrounding the valley. The misty mountains turned white, their slopes treacherous. The high pass closed until spring. Fires burned in stone hearths throughout the long nights. The halls of Rivendell were warm despite the cold outside. Elven craft had made them so. Estelle sat near those fires, reading chronicles of the Second Age. The wind howled outside. It came down from the mountains with a voice like wolves. Inside, there was only silence and the turning of pages, the crackle of fire, the occasional soft footstep of an elf passing through the halls. He learned the Sindarin language first, then Quenya. Sindarin was the common elvish tongue, spoken throughout Middle-earth. Quenya was the ancient language, the tongue of Valinor. Few outside the elves learned it, but Estelle was an apt pupil. The words felt strange on his tongue at first. The sounds were unlike the common speech, soft, flowing, musical. With years they became natural. He dreamed in Sindarin. He thought in both tongues equally. He could recite the names of the Valar without error. Manwë, Vada, Ulmo, Aule, Yavanna, Mandos, Lorien, Nienna, Tulkas, Orome, Nessa, Este, Vaire, Vanna, and Melkor, who had fallen and become Morgoth. He could sing the Lay of Lúthien in its original form, the tale of Beren and Lúthien, who loved across the divide of mortality and immortality. His voice echoed in empty halls during those recitations. The elves who lived in Rivendell watched him grow. There were perhaps 100 elves dwelling there at any time. Some had dwelt there since Rivendell's founding in the Second Age. Others came and went, travelling to and from the Grey Havens. They said nothing of his true heritage. They treated him with kindness, but kept their distance. Elves do not easily befriend mortals whose lives pass so quickly. To an elf, a human life is like a single season. Brief, poignant, soon gone. They loved mortals, but the pain of loss was great. So they remained cordial but reserved. Estelle felt that distance, though he didn't understand it fully. He had elven playmates when he was very young, but as he grew, they remained children while he matured. The age difference became awkward. Eventually he spent more time with books than with companions. He spent many hours alone, walking in the gardens, sitting by the Bruin and watching the water flow, standing on high balconies looking at the mountains, thinking thoughts too deep for a child, wondering about his father, whom he could not remember, wondering about his place in the world. Mornings began with simple meals. Breakfast was taken in a small hall overlooking a courtyard. Bread baked fresh each day by elven cooks. The bread was light, sweet, unlike mortal bread. It filled you with just a few bites. Honey from hives kept in the gardens. The bees were a special breed, golden, that never stung those who treated them gently. Their honey tasted of flowers and sunlight. Water from the Bruinen, cold and clean. Sometimes there was fruit, apples, pears, berries. Sometimes cheese made from goat's milk. The meal was always light, never heavy. Elves ate for pleasure more than necessity. After breakfast came studies. Maps of Middle-earth spread across wooden tables in the library. Great maps drawn on parchment, showing every river and range. He traced the paths of ancient roads with his finger. The Great East Road running from the Grey Havens to the Misty Mountains. It continued east from Rivendell, through Mirkwood, all the way to Erebor. The North-South Road connecting Arna's ruined cities, Fornost and Numinas, the Shire, Tharbad, and south to Gondor. The passes through the mountains, each marked with Elvish script. The High Pass, north of Rivendell, the Redhorn Gate far to the south, the Gap of Rohan between the mountains. He memorized these paths though he had never walked them. He could draw the map from memory, every river named, every forest marked, every ruin noted. Afternoon brought physical training. This took place in a courtyard with smooth stone floors. Elven instructors taught him to use sword and bow. Instructor for sword was Glorfindel, an elf lord who had dwelt in Valinor. Glorfindel was patient but demanding. He taught Estelle the forms slowly. Each movement practiced 1,000 times. The blade held just so, the feet positioned correctly. Balance, always balance. His movements were clumsy at first. The sword felt heavy in his young hands. His arms tired quickly. He dropped the blade more than once. But Glorfindel never showed impatience. Again, he would say, and Estelle would pick up the sword and try again. The bow was taught by Elrond's sons, Elladan and Elrohir. The twins were skilled archers, deadly at great distances. They taught Estelle to string a bow, to nock an arrow, to draw smoothly. The bowstring cut his fingers until calluses formed. His arms shook from holding the draw. His shots went wide, then low, then high. But gradually over months and years he improved. The arrows began to hit the target. First the outer rings, then inner, then finally the centre. Years passed with the same routines. Winter, spring, summer, autumn. The seasons turned, but Rivendell changed little. It was a timeless place. The same trees grew in the same gardens. The same elves walked the same halls. Only Estelle changed. Estelle grew taller, stronger. His shoulders broadened. His chest deepened. His voice broke and deepened. By his 15th year he stood as tall as a man. By his 18th year he was taller than most. His face lost its childish roundness. His features became noble, with high cheekbones and a strong jaw. He resembled his ancestors, the kings of old. Still he did not know his true name. He knew he was Dunedain. He knew his father had been chieftain of that remnant people, but he did not know his full lineage. He did not know he was heir to 2 kingdoms. On his 20th birthday, Elrond revealed the truth. It was evening. Estelle was called to Elrond's study, a room high in the house. The study was lined with books and scrolls. A fire burned in the hearth. Elrond sat in a chair, his face grave. "Estelle," he said, "you're a man now. It is time you knew the truth." Estelle stood before him, confused and nervous. "Your name is not Estelle," Elrond said. "That was a name of protection, to keep you hidden. Your true name is Aragorn, son of Arathorn, son of Arador. You're the 39th heir of Isildur in direct line. You're the chieftain of the Dunedain of the north. You're the rightful king of Arnor and Gondor. The words fell on Estelle, on Aragorn, like hammer blows. He stared at Elrond, unable to speak. King? He was no king. He was just a boy who had lived here all his life. But Elrond was not finished. He went to a chest and opened it. From within he drew a sword in a black scabbard. "This is Narsil," Elrond said. "The sword of Elendil, which was broken when Isildur cut the ring from Sauron's hand. It has been kept here in Rivendell for 3,000 years, waiting. It is yours now, though it remains broken. When the time comes, it will be reforged." Aragorn took the sword with trembling hands. It was lighter than he expected. He drew it partially from the scabbard. The blade was shattered, ending in jagged metal halfway up, but even broken, it was beautiful. The metal gleamed with a pale light. Elven letters ran along the fuller. He could read them. "Narsil is my name, a mighty sword. Telchar made me in Nogrod. Elrond also gave him the ring of Barahir, a silver ring set with a green stone carved with twin serpents." "This was Barahir's ring," Elrond said. "Barahir saved the life of Finrod Felagund in the First Age. Finrod gave him this ring as a token of friendship. It has passed down through all your line. From Barahir to Beren, from Beren to Dior, from Dior to Elwing, from Elwing to Elros, the first king of Númenor. Through all the kings of Númenor and Arna, it has come to you." Aragorn put the ring on his finger. It fit perfectly. He looked at Elrond, overwhelmed. "What am I to do?" he asked. His voice was hoarse. "For now, continue as you have," Elrond said gently. "Learn, grow, prepare yourself. The time for kingship has not yet come. That time may not come in your lifetime, but you must be ready if it does." Aragorn nodded, unable to speak further. The weight of that knowledge settled on him like a heavy cloak. That night he could not sleep. He lay in his bed listening to water falling in the fountains. The sound that had always brought comfort now seemed distant. Everything had changed. He was not who he had thought he was. His whole life had been a preparation for a destiny he had never imagined. Everything had changed. His childhood was over. His true life was beginning. In the spring of the year 2951, Aragorn left Rivendell for the first time. He was 20 years old, though he looked barely 16. He went out into Eriador to join the Rangers. The Dunedain who remained in the north were few. Their kingdom had fallen 1,000 years before. Arna had been divided into 3 realms: Arthedain, Cardolan, and Rudor. All 3 had fallen to war and plague. The last king had died at the Battle of Fornost in Third Age 1975. Now the Dunedain had no kingdom. They numbered perhaps 100 men scattered across vast lands. They lived in hidden camps in the wilderness. They married late and had few children. Their numbers dwindled with each generation. They patrolled the ruins of Arna, the kingdom that had fallen. They watched the roads. They kept travellers safe, though few travellers knew of their service. They asked for no payment, no recognition. They served because it was their duty, because someone had to guard the innocent. Aragorn joined them. He left Rivendell on a morning in late March. The sky was clear, the air cool. Gilraen, his mother, embraced him at the gates. She said nothing, but her eyes were full of sorrow, or as she knew what life he was choosing, a life of hardship, danger, loneliness. But she did not try to stop him. This was his fate. Elrond gave him provisions and advice. "Walk humbly," he said. "You are heir to kingdoms, but the people do not know you. You must earn their respect through deeds, not blood." Aragorn nodded. He wore dark grey clothing, weathered and travel-stained. The clothing of a ranger, designed to blend with stone and shadow. He carried his sword, though not Narsil. Narsil remained in Rivendell, too precious to risk. He carried a simpler blade, well made but unremarkable. He carried also a bow, a hunting knife, and a pack of supplies. The pack contained dried meat, hard bread, a water skin, a blanket, flint and steel, rope, and wound herbs. Nothing more. Rangers travelled light. Every ounce carried was an ounce that slowed you down. Speed and endurance mattered more than comfort. His first patrol took him north along the East Road. He travelled with two older rangers, Halbarad and Dunamir. Halbarad was in his 40s, lean and weathered. He had been a ranger for 20 years. Dunamir was older still, perhaps 60, though he looked 40. The Dundane aged slowly. They didn't speak much as they travelled. Rangers conserved words like they conserved food. Speech drew attention. Silence was safer. The road ran straight through empty lands. It was an ancient road, built in the Second Age. The stones had been laid by Númenórean engineers, but centuries of neglect had taken their toll. Grass grew between the ancient paving stones. In some places, the road had disappeared entirely, buried under earth and roots. They walked for days, seeing no one. Hills rolled away on either side, covered in spring grass. The grass was green and thick, dotted with wildflowers, buttercups, daisies, purple vetch. The wind blew constantly from the west. It carried the smell of distant rain and sea salt. At night they made small camps in hollows where the wind was less. Aragorn learned the routine of ranging, how to choose a campsite that could be defended, how to build a fire in a pit so the light did not spread, how to position sentries so they could see approaches but not be seen. They built tiny fires that gave little light, just enough to heat water for tea or warm hands. They ate cold meals more often than hot ones, dried meat that had to be chewed for minutes before it softened, and a hard bread that could break a tooth if bitten carelessly. Fire drew attention in these lands. Orcs could see firelight for miles, so could bandits and worse things. The darkness of Eriador was complete. No lights of towns or villages broke the horizon. The nearest settlement was Bree, 50 miles south, otherwise nothing but wilderness. Only stars above, cold and bright. They burned with a fierce light in the clean air. Aragorn learned to read those stars as guides. The sickle, the constellation of 7 stars. The Valasirka, the sickle of the Valar, also called the Great Bear in the north. The Menelmakar, the swordsman of the sky, Orion to southerners. Each constellation marked direction and season. Each told what time of night it was. He learned to navigate by them as surely as by sun. He slept wrapped in his cloak with his sword beside him. The cloak was wool, thick and warm, but it was never quite warm enough. The spring nights were cold in Eriador. Frost formed on the grass most mornings. Sleep came in short intervals. Rangers learned to wake at any sound. A rabbit moving through brush, an owl hunting, the distant howl of wolves. Any sound might be danger. So sleep was light, interrupted, never restful. Aragorn woke often that first week. His body was not accustomed to sleeping on the ground. His muscles ached. His back hurt from the hard earth. But he did not complain. Halbarad and Dunamir said nothing of their own discomfort, so neither did he. Morning came slowly, with mist rising from the ground. The mist formed in valleys and hollows, thick and white. Visibility dropped to a few yards. They waited for the sun to burn it off before moving. Travelling in mist was foolish. You could walk into an ambush without seeing it until too late. When the mist cleared, they walked. Aragorn woke stiff and cold each morning. His clothes were damp with dew. His boots were wet. His fingers were numb. He ate a piece of dried meat and drank cold water. Then he shouldered his pack and continued walking. Days blended together. Walk, rest, eat, sleep. The same cycle repeated endlessly. His feet blistered, then the blisters hardened. His shoulders ached from the pack, then grew accustomed. His legs burned from walking, then grew stronger. He learned to walk for hours without thinking about it, to let his body move while his mind watched the land, always watching for movement, for shapes that didn't belong, for signs of passage. He reached the ruins of Fornost after 2 weeks of travel. Fornost had been the capital of Arthedain, the last kingdom of Arnor. It had been the greatest city of the north for thousands of years. It had fallen in Third Age 1975 to the Witch King of Angmar. The Witch King had led an army of orcs and evil men against the city. He had broken its walls and slaughtered its people. The King of Arthedain had died in battle. His sons had fled south. The city had been abandoned. Now, nearly 1,000 years later, only broken walls remained. Aragorn walked through empty streets overgrown with grass. The streets had been paved once, fitted stone. Now grass grew in every crack. Saplings sprouted from the paving. In another 100 years, the forest would reclaim everything. Stone arches stood alone, leading nowhere. They'd been gateways once, entrances to great buildings. The buildings were gone, collapsed into rubble. Only the arches remained, monuments to vanished glory. Towers had collapsed into piles of rubble. He climbed one pile carefully. The stones shifted under his feet. At the top he could see across the ruins. Foundations marked where great halls had been. He could trace the street plan, the city's layout. Fornost had been built in a star pattern. 8 main streets radiating from a central square. In the centre had stood the citadel, the king's fortress. Now only the outline of its foundation remained. Wind moved through these ruins with a hollow sound. It whistled through empty doorways and broken windows. It moaned around standing walls. The sound was mournful, lonely. And Aragorn sat on a fallen pillar and ate his midday meal. Hard bread and water. The bread was stale, difficult to chew. His jaw ached from chewing. He ate slowly, looking at the ruins around him. This had been his ancestors' kingdom. Here his line had ruled for 1,000 years. Here his kinfolk had walked and lived and loved. Now it was nothing. Grass and stone and wind. No voices, no life. Just silence. He felt the weight of history pressing on him. All this had fallen. All this was lost. And he was supposed to reclaim it somehow. How could one man restore what centuries had destroyed? The task seemed impossible. He finished his bread and continued north. Halbrand and Dunamir were waiting at the north gate. They had scouted the far side while Aragorn explored. They found no sign of enemies. The other 3 continued together. They walked north to the shores of Lake Evendim. The lake stretched to the horizon, grey under overcast skies. It was vast, one of the largest lakes in Eriador. 20 miles across, 50 miles long. Waves lapped against stone docks built in the elder days. The docks were Númenórean work, fitted stone that had lasted 3,000 years. But they were crumbling now. Waves wore them away year by year. The city of Annúminas had stood here once, greatest of Arna's cities. It had been founded by Elendil himself, the capital of the kingdom for its first 1,000 years, before the kingdom split, before the people moved to Fornost. Now Annúminas lay in ruins, most of it beneath the water. When the city was abandoned, the lake level had risen, or the land had sunk. Either way, the lower city was submerged. On clear days, men said, you could see the towers in the depths. Aragorn stood on the shore for a long time. The wind was cold coming off the water. It smelled of fish and weeds in deep places. Spring here was colder than in Rivendell. The valley of Rivendell was protected, warm. Here on the exposed shore, the wind cut through clothing. He pulled his cloak tighter. Still the cold seeped in. He scanned the lake's surface, looking for the submerged ruins. But the water was cloudy, disturbed by wind. He could see nothing below, perhaps on a calmer day. That night it rained. The storm came in from the west, rolling across the lake. Dark clouds blotted out the stars. Wind rose, bending the grass flat. Then rain fell in sheets, heavy, cold, driven by wind. He found shelter under an overhang of rock near the lake. It was a shallow cave, barely deep enough for 3 men. But it kept off the worst of the rain. The rain fell steadily through the night. It drummed on the ground outside. Water dripped from the rock above, forming puddles at their feet. He could not light a fire in the rain. The wood they had gathered was soaked. Even if they lit it, the wind would blow it out. So they sat in darkness, listening to the rain. He ate dried meat and drank water from his skin. He slept poorly, shivering. His cloak was wool, which retained some warmth even when wet. But some warmth was not enough. The cold seeped into his bones. He dozed fitfully, waking every hour. By morning the rain had stopped, but everything was wet. His cloak, his pack, his boots. Water had seeped into everything. His blanket was damp. His food was damp. Even the leather of his boots was soaked through. He wrung water from the cloak as best he could. Then he spread it over a bush, hoping the wind would dry it. The wind was steady, but the air was humid. Drying would take hours. Halbrad built a small fire despite the damp. They needed hot food to warm themselves. He used birch bark, which burned even when wet, to start the fire, then added small twigs, then larger branches. Eventually they had a decent fire. They heated water and made tea. The tea was just hot water with crushed herbs, mint and thyme gathered during travel. But the heat was wonderful. Aragorn wrapped his hands around the cup, absorbing its warmth. He drank slowly, letting the heat spread through his chest. After tea and dried meat, they continued. Then he began the journey south. The return journey took 3 weeks. They followed different paths, patrolling different sections of the East Road. Halbarad split off to check the weather hills. Dunamir went southwest toward Tharbad. Aragorn continued along the road itself. Now he was alone. This was part of ranger training, learning to travel solo, learning to trust yourself, learning to survive without companions. He found it both freeing and frightening. Freeing because he could set his own pace, stop when he wanted, rest when he needed. Frightening because there was no one to watch his back, no one to share the watch, no one to help if he was injured or attacked. He was entirely alone. He saw a few travellers during this time. The road was not completely abandoned. A merchant with 2 carts moving east toward Bree. The carts were pulled by oxen, slow and plodding. The merchant looked nervous, scanning the horizons constantly. Travelling alone through Eriador was dangerous. Aragorn watched from a distance but did not approach. Rangers kept their watch unseen. They did not reveal themselves unless necessary. A family walking west, their belongings on their backs. A man, a woman, 3 children. The children looked tired, stumbling. The woman carried the youngest. Where were they going? Where had they come from? Aragorn did not know, but they looked desperate, fleeing something. He watched them pass, making sure no danger followed. Then he moved on. A lone rider who passed in the night, visible only as a shadow. Aragorn heard the hoofbeats first. He hid in brush beside the road. The rider galloped past, moving fast, too fast for the darkness, either desperate or foolish. The horse and rider disappeared into the night. Aragorn never learned who it was. Once he found tracks that troubled him. He was walking along the road when he noticed them. Large, heavy prints in the mud beside the road. The prints were too big for wolves, too heavy. The gait was wrong. The stride was longer. These were the prints of wargs, evil wolves bred and controlled by orcs, intelligent, malicious creatures. far more dangerous than normal wolves. He followed the tracks for 2 days. They led north toward the Etten Moors. The Etten Moors were a desolate region of hills and bogs. Trolls dwelt there, and worse things. The tracks disappeared into rocky ground at the edge of the moors. He could not follow further without risking the moors themselves. That would be foolish. One man alone should not enter the Etten Moors. He didn't find what made the tracks. He filed the memory away and continued his patrol. Information about enemy movements was valuable. The rangers shared intelligence when they met. Gradually they built a picture of enemy activity, where orcs were seen, where wargs hunted, where roads were safe or dangerous. This information saved lives. By the time he returned to Rivendell, 6 weeks had passed. His boots were worn through at the soles. He had restitched them twice with thread from his pack, but they were beyond repair now. His face was weathered and sunburned. The spring sun had burned his nose and cheeks. The wind had chapped his lips. He had lost weight, his cheeks hollowed, and dried rations did not provide much nourishment. And he had rationed strictly, never knowing when he might find game. Elrond looked at him when he arrived and said nothing, but his eyes were sad. He saw what this life was doing to Aragorn. This was the life Aragorn had chosen. This was the life of the Dunedain. Hard, lonely, thankless, but necessary. Someone had to guard the borders. Someone had to walk the empty lands. If not the Dunedain, then who? In the year 2957 of the Third Age, Aragorn rode south. He was 26 years old, though he looked perhaps 19. He had spent 6 years as a ranger in Eriador. 6 years of patrols, hardship, constant vigilance. He had learned the craft of ranging thoroughly, but he needed to see more of Middle-earth. He needed to understand the realms he might one day rule. Gondor was too dangerous yet. There, someone might recognize the signs of Númenórean ancestry in him, might ask questions he could not answer, but Rohan was different. Rohan was a younger kingdom, allied to Gondor but independent. Its people were horsemen, less concerned with ancient lineages. He could serve there without drawing suspicion. He left Eriador and travelled to the kingdom of Rohan. He went not as Aragorn, but under the name Thorongil. In the language of the Rohirrim, this meant Eagle of the Star. It was a name that revealed nothing of his lineage, just a poetic name, suitable for a wandering warrior. The journey from Eriador to Rohan took many weeks. He travelled alone on foot at first, south along the north-south road, through the Shire, though he skirted its borders. The Shire was not a place for rangers. The hobbits there lived in peace, ignorant of the dangers beyond their borders. The rangers kept it that way. Past Sarn Ford, where the road crossed the Barad-dûn, south through Minhiriath, an empty region of hills. Once it had been forested, but the trees had been cut down in ancient wars. Now only grass and thorny scrub remained. He reached Tharbad after 3 weeks. Tharbad had been a great city once, at the ford of the Gwathlo, but it had been ruined by floods and war centuries ago. Now it was a shadow of itself. A few hundred people lived in the ruins, fishermen mostly, and river traders. The bridge across the Gwathlo was broken. Only a few spans remained, jutting from the water like broken teeth. He crossed by ferry, paying with a silver coin from his small hoard. The ferryman was old, bent, suspicious. He said nothing during the crossing, just poled the raft across the muddy water. South of Tharbad, the land improved. This was Enedwaith, the middle region. More grass, fewer bogs. Hills rolled gently under wide skies. In Tharbad he bought a horse, a sturdy gelding, not young but sound. Brown with a white blaze on its face, the horse cost most of his remaining money. But walking to Rohan would take another month. Riding would take 2 weeks, worth the cost. The horse was not trained for war, but it was calm and reliable. He named it Rohirrim, Horse of the Lady, though he did not know why the name came to him. They rode south together. Aragorn was not an exceptional horseman. He had learned to ride in Rivendell. Yes, but the elves were not horse people. His riding was competent, but not graceful. Nothing like the Rohirrim, who rode as if born to the saddle. But Rohirrim was patient with him. The horse seemed to sense his inexperience and compensated. They crossed the Swan Fleet, a marshy region where the Glanduin River spread into countless channels. This was treacherous ground. The ground was soft, difficult to traverse. In some places the earth looked solid, but was actually floating vegetation. Step on it, and you could sink to your waist in cold water. Rohirrim moved slowly, picking its way between pools of standing water. Aragorn let the horse choose the path. Animals had better instincts for safe ground than men. Mist rose from the marshes in the mornings, thick, white, obscuring everything beyond a few yards. Visibility was poor. Aragorn dismounted and led Rohirrim by the reins. Safer to walk than ride when you couldn't see. He navigated by the sun when it appeared, by memory when it did not. The Swan Fleet took 4 days to cross. Slow, wet, miserable days. His boots were soaked. His horse's legs were caked with mud. Biting flies swarmed in clouds, feeding on man and horse alike. They had to keep moving to avoid the worst of them. After the marshes came better ground. The land rose into hills. The air cleared. The smell of rot and stagnant water faded. Ahead rose the misty mountains, their peaks white with snow. And to the south, the White Mountains, a different range. Between them lay the Gap of Rohan. The gap was the passage between the 2 mountain ranges. It was wide, perhaps 20 miles across at its narrowest, and the land was open. No trees, no obstacles, just grass stretching to the horizon. Wind blew constantly through this passage. It funneled between the mountains, picking up speed. It bent the grass flat and whistled around stones. Aragorn's cloak whipped behind him. Rohirrim's mane streamed in the wind. The constant wind was exhausting. It pushed against them as they rode. It roared in their ears. At night, even lying down, the wind did not stop. It made sleep difficult. He saw Isengard in the distance, the tower of Orthanc rising dark against the sky. Orthanc was a black tower, built by the Númenóreans in ancient times. It rose from a circular wall, tall and sharp. From a distance it looked like a spear thrust into the earth. Saruman the White dwelt there now. Saruman was the head of the White Council, the leader of the Istari, and he had been given Orthanc by the Steward of Gondor centuries ago. He dwelt there studying lore and watching the borders. Aragorn did not approach it. He had no business with wizards at this time, and something about Orthanc made him uneasy. It looked too much like a fortress. Why would a wizard need such defences? He put the thought aside and continued east. He continued east into Rohan proper. The land changed. Open plains stretched in every direction. Grass covered the earth like a sea. It was green now in spring, but he had heard it turn gold in summer. The grass was knee-high in places, waist-high in others. It rippled in the wind like water. Herds of horses ran wild here, dark shapes on the horizon. Dozens of them moving together. They ran for the joy of it, their tails streaming, beautiful, free. The Rohirrim lived for horses. Their entire culture was built around them. They bred them, trained them, rode them into battle. A Rohir without a horse was like a fish without water, diminished, incomplete. Aragorn reached Doras, the capital city, in early autumn. He had taken longer than expected. The journey had been slowed by the Swan Fleet, and by his unfamiliarity with travelling by horse. But he arrived. The city sat on a hill rising from the plains. It was not a large city. Perhaps 1,000 people lived there, but it was the heart of Rohan. A wooden palisade surrounded it, tall logs sharpened to points. Gates stood open during the day, closed at night. Guards watched from platforms inside the palisade. Inside, the great hall of Meadowcell dominated all other buildings. The hall was vast, 100 feet long and 50 wide. Its roof was thatched with gold, actual gold woven into the straw. In sunlight it gleamed like fire. At night it glowed softly in moonlight. The hall proclaimed Rohan's wealth and power. Aragorn rode through the gates in the afternoon. The sun was behind him, casting long shadows. His travel-stained cloak and worn gear marked him as a wanderer. But his bearing was noble, his weapons well kept. The guards watched him but didn't stop him. He rode up the hill's main street to Meadowcell. He dismounted at the hall's steps. A stable boy came to take Rohirrim. Aragorn handed over the reins but told the boy to treat the horse well. The boy nodded, eyes wide. Aragorn climbed the steps to Meadowcell's doors. The doors were tall, carved with horses running. He pushed them open and entered. Inside, the hall was dim. Light came from windows high in the walls and from a central fire pit. The fire pit was long, stretching down the hall's centre. Smoke rose to escape through vents in the roof. Pillars carved like trees held up the roof. Tapestries hung on the walls depicting battles and horses. At the far end, on a dais, sat King Thengel. Thengel was in his 60s, grey-haired but strong. His face was weathered, lined with years. He sat in a wooden throne carved from a single tree. Around him stood his councillors and captains. Aragorn walked forward. His footsteps echoed in the hall. He stopped before the dais and bowed. "Lord King," he said in the common speech. His accent was educated, northern. "I am called Thorongil. I have come to offer my sword in service to Rohan." Thengel studied him for a long moment, and he saw a young man, tall and lean, weathered by travel, armed with sword and bow, eyes grey and piercing. There was something about this Thorongil, something that spoke of nobility, though he wore no insignia. "From where do you come?" Thengel asked. "From the north," Aragorn said. That was true, if vague. "And why do you wish to serve Rohan?" "Because Rohan stands against the darkness," Aragorn said, "and I would stand with those who do so." Simple words, but spoken with conviction. Thengel nodded slowly. "Rohan has need of warriors," he said. "Our borders are long and our enemies many. If you serve well, you will be rewarded. If you serve poorly, you will be dismissed. Do you accept these terms?" "I do," Aragorn said. "Then you are accepted," Thengel said. "Report to Grimbold. Any captain of the 3rd Eord." He gestured to a man standing nearby. Grimbold was a large man, broad-shouldered with a thick beard. He nodded to Aragorn. "Come," he said gruffly. Aragorn followed him from the hall. He had been accepted. He was now a rider of Rohan. Life in Edoras followed the rhythms of a military household. The Rohirrim organised their warriors into Eoreds, cavalry units. Each Eored consisted of about 120 riders. Rohan had perhaps 20 Eoreds in total. Some were stationed at Edoras. Others patrolled the borders. Aragorn was assigned to the 3rd Eored. Grimbold commanded it. Mornings began before dawn. Aragorn woke in the barracks with other riders. The barracks were long buildings near the palisade. Wooden walls, thatched roofs, packed earth floors. Bunks lined the walls. 2 tiers. Each rider had a bunk, a chest for belongings, and a hook for gear. Nothing more. The air was cold in winter. Frost formed on the inside of the windows. Aragorn dressed quickly in the darkness. Wool tunic, leather breeches, boots. The clothing was heavier than ranger gear. Rohirrim wore more protection because they rode into battle. Rangers relied on stealth. First duty was always to the horses. The stables were long buildings near the palisade. 40 horses stood in stalls, their breath steaming in the cold air. Each rider cared for his own mount. This was sacred to the Rohirrim. A rider who neglected his horse was scorned. Aragorn brushed Rohirrim's coat until it shone. He checked its hooves for stones or cracks. He picked out the dirt carefully with a hoofpick. He examined the horse's legs for swelling or heat. He checked its teeth and gums. He fed it oats mixed with chopped apples, then hay. The smell of horses was constant. Sweat, leather, hay, manure. It was not unpleasant. It was the smell of life, of honest work. After the horses came breakfast in Meduseld. Riders filed into the hall and sat at long tables. Bread, porridge, cheese, sometimes bacon. The bread was dark rye, dense and filling. The porridge was oats boiled with water, sometimes milk. Cheese from goats and sheep. Bacon when a pig had been slaughtered recently. Ale for those who wanted it, though most drank water in the mornings. Ale made men slow. Morning was for work. Conversations were quiet. Men still waking up, chewing their bread, planning the day. Then came training. They drilled in the fields below Meduseld. Wide open spaces where hundreds of horses could maneuver, riding formations, how to ride in line, how to form a wedge, how to wheel left or right without losing formation, spear work from horseback, how to couch the spear for a charge, how to thrust from the saddle without losing balance, how to recover the spear after a thrust, sword drills, drawing the sword while riding, cutting left and right, overhead strokes. The movements were different from foot combat. On horseback, everything was about momentum. The same movements repeated hundreds of times. Muscle memory, the body learning to act without thought. In battle, thought was too slow. Only trained reactions saved you. Thengel watched these drills from the hall steps. He rarely intervened, trusting his captains. But his presence meant the men drilled harder. No one wanted to look incompetent before the king. Aragorn proved skilled with sword and spear. His training with Glorfindel served him well. His footwork translated to horsemanship. Balance was balance, whether on feet or horseback. His horsemanship was adequate but not exceptional. The Rohirrim had been born to the saddle. They had learned to ride before they could walk. Aragorn had learned riding later in life. Still, he was competent. He could ride in formation without embarrassing himself. He could thrust a spear from horseback with reasonable accuracy. He could cut with a sword without falling off. Adequate for a new rider. He would improve with practice. He listened more than he spoke. Rangers were watchers, listeners. They gathered information. Now Aragorn did the same in Rohan. He learned the customs of the Rohirrim, the importance of oaths. When a Rohir swore an oath, he meant it unto death. Oath-breakers were cast out, dishonoured. No greater shame existed. The honour given to horses above all beasts. A man who mistreated a horse was beaten or exiled. Horses were sacred. The songs they sang in the hall at night. After the evening meal, riders gathered around the fire. They drank ale and sang. Songs of Eorl the Young, who had led the Rohirrim north. Songs of battles won and lost. Songs of horses that had never been tamed. Songs of love, though few and sad. Aragorn learned these songs slowly. The language was difficult. Rohirric was related to the northern tongues of Eriador, but different. He could understand it with effort. Speaking it was harder. His accent remained foreign. But the Rohirrim appreciated his efforts. A foreigner trying to learn their language earned respect. Winter in Rohan was harsh. Snow fell heavily across the plains. The wind cut through any clothing. It howled day and night. The plains offered no shelter from it. Patrols continued despite the cold. Riders went out in pairs or small groups watching the borders. The western border ran along Fangorn Forest. Fangorn was old, older than kingdoms. It had stood since the First Age. Trees there were vast, ancient, dark. The forest was thick, impenetrable. Little light reached the ground beneath its canopy. Strange sounds came from its depths, creaking like wood but rhythmic, almost like footsteps. Voices that might be wind or might be speech. No one knew for certain. The Rohirrim did not enter Fangorn. They patrolled its edges and went no further. Old stories warned against entering. Men who entered Fangorn did not return, or returned changed. Speaking of trees that walked, the Rohirrim believed these tales. Aragorn remembered Treebeard from Elvish lore. The Ents, the shepherds of trees. They were real, though few believed any more. Perhaps they still dwelt in Fangorn. He said nothing of this to his companions. He patrolled the forest edge many times. The forest stood like a wall on the left. Trees so close together a man could not pass between them. The edge was abrupt, unnatural, as if something had drawn a line. Here ends the plains, here begins the forest. Open plains stretched on the right, grass bent flat by wind, snow covering everything in winter. He watched for orcs coming down from the mountains. The misty mountains to the west harboured orc tribes. They raided when they could. He watched for wolves. Ordinary wolves, not wargs, but still dangerous in winter when food was scarce. They attacked horses sometimes. He watched for Dunlendings, the wild men from the west. The Dunlendings lived in the hills beyond the Gap of Rohan. They were not evil, but they were hostile. They raided Rohan's borders, stealing horses and cattle. Old grudges existed between Dunlending and Rohir. The Rohirrim had taken this land from the Dunlendings' ancestors. The Dunlendings had not forgiven. Most patrols were uneventful. Days of riding through empty lands, checking for tracks, for smoke, for any sign of enemies, finding nothing. Nights camped under stars or in the shelter of rocks. The cold seeped through blankets. Fires helped but never quite dispelled the chill. The wind always found a way through. Sometimes they saw nothing but grass and sky for weeks, empty horizons in every direction. The loneliness of the plains was profound. Not the loneliness of Eriador, which felt abandoned, but the loneliness of vast open spaces. You could see for 20 miles and there was nothing. No trees, no hills, no people, just grass and wind and sky. Other times they found signs of passage, tracks crossing the plains, hoofprints from Dunlending raiders, footprints from orcs moving south, cold fire pits where travellers had camped. Once a dead horse killed by wolves. The carcass had been stripped almost clean. Only bones and hide remained. The wolves had been thorough. They reported everything to the king. Every sighting, every track, every sign. Slowly a picture emerged of enemy movements, where threats were concentrated, where borders needed more patrols. Information was a weapon. Knowledge prevented surprises. In the hall at night, riders gathered around the central fire. After the evening meal, when duties were done, they drank ale from wooden cups. The ale was strong, dark, slightly sour. It warmed the belly and loosened tongues. They told stories of battles fought in generations past. The Battle of the Field of Celebrant, where Eorl had saved Gondor. The wars against the orcs in the mountains, feuds with the Dunlendings that had lasted decades. Stories of Eorl the Young, who first brought the Rohirrim north. How he had ridden from the north to answer Gondor's call. How he had defeated the Balcuth in a great cavalry charge. How Gondor had given him the province of Calenardon in gratitude. How it had become Rohan. Stories of great horses that had never been tamed. Legendary stallions that ran wild in the mountains. horses that could outrun the wind, horses that understood speech, horses that chose their riders, not the other way around. The Rohirrim believed horses had souls, noble souls, perhaps nobler than men, stories of love, though few and sad. The Rohirrim were not given to romance in their tales. Their stories were of war and horses and duty. But sometimes, late at night, when the ale had flowed, someone would tell a story of love lost, a rider who had loved a woman but died in battle, a woman who had waited for a rider who never returned. These stories were brief or understated. The Rohirrim did not wear their hearts openly, but the emotion was there in the pauses and the silences. Aragorn listened to these stories. He seldom contributed his own. When pressed, he told tales of the north, of the ruins of Arnor that stretched for hundreds of miles, of the rangers who still walked those empty lands, of Fornost and Annúminas, great cities now fallen, of winters in Eriador where the wind never stopped. The Rohirrim listened with interest but did not fully understand. To them, a kingdom without horses was barely a kingdom at all. How could you hold land without cavalry? How could you patrol borders on foot? It seemed impossible to them. Aragorn tried to explain. Rangers did not hold land, they watched it. They moved in silence and shadow. They struck from ambush and faded away. He had different tactics for a different land. The Rohirrim nodded but remained sceptical. Their way was the cavalry charge, the thunder of hooves, the shock of impact, overwhelming force applied at the critical point. That was how you won battles. Anything else was just strange. Years passed in this service. 2,957 turned to 2,958, then 2,959. The seasons turned. Spring with its rains and new grass, summer with heat that baked the plains, autumn with cool winds and harvest, winter with snow and bitter cold. Each year the same cycle. Each year Aragorn grew more skilled. His horsemanship improved. He could now ride in complicated formations without thought. He could fight from horseback with real competence. He learned to throw a spear while galloping, to control his horse with his knees while using both hands for weapons, learned to jump obstacles without losing speed. He grew familiar with every part of Rohan, the river valleys where the Entwash and Snowbourne flowed, the hills along the White Mountains' northern slopes, the desolate stretch along Fangorn's border, the gap of Rohan with its constant wind, the Vold, the northern region of high cold plains. He learned to speak Rohirric with less accent. His vocabulary expanded. He could joke with his companions in their own tongue. He could sing their songs without mangling the words. He learned their drinking toasts, their insults, which were elaborate and creative, their proverbs, which were usually about horses. He was respected, but never quite belonged. He remained Thorongil, the stranger from the north, the mysterious warrior who had appeared one day, who served loyally but revealed nothing of his past, who was clearly noble-born but claimed no title. The riders speculated about him. Some thought he was a prince in exile. Some thought he was fleeing a crime. Some thought he was a bastard son of some northern lord. None guessed the truth. How could they? The heir of Isildur lost for 1,000 years serving as a common rider. It was beyond imagining. In 2963, Thengel sent messengers south to Gondor. The political situation was changing. Tensions with Mordor were growing. The Dark Tower had been rebuilt. Sauron had openly declared himself. Orcs raided more frequently from the mountains. The eastern borders of Gondor were under pressure. Gondor, the great kingdom of the south, was Rohan's ally. The Oath of Yall bound them. When Gondor called, Rohan must answer. But the alliance had grown cold over years of peace. Few living Rohirrim had ever seen Gondor. The kingdoms had drifted apart. Thengel sought to strengthen those ties. He sent messages of friendship to Ecthelion, steward of Gondor. He offered aid if it was needed. He proposed exchanges of warriors to rebuild trust. Aragorn listened to these discussions in the hall. He sat among the other riders, but his mind was far away. His heart turned south. Gondor was the kingdom of his fathers. The throne of Gondor was his by right, though none living knew it. Minas Tirith, the White City, the Tower of Ecthelion, the dead white tree in the courtyard. These were part of his heritage. He needed to see them. He needed to understand Gondor as he now understood Rohan. He began to think of leaving. That winter he made his decision. Then he would go south to Gondor. He would serve there as he had served in Rohan, learn their ways, their strengths, their weaknesses, prepare himself for the day when he might claim his throne, if that day ever came. He approached Thengel in early spring of 2964. He requested a private audience. Thengel granted it, curious. They met in a small chamber off the main hall, just the two of them. "Lord King," Aragorn said, "I request leave to depart." Thengel looked at him for a long moment. "You're leaving Rohan?" "Yes, my lord." "May I ask why?" Aragorn chose his words carefully. "I have learned much here. Rohan has been generous to me, but my road leads south now." Thengel nodded slowly. He had known this day would come. Thorongil had always been a wanderer. He would not stay forever. "You have served well," Thengel said. "Better than many born to the mark." "Thank you, my lord." "Where will you go?" "To Gondor," Aragorn said, "if you will give me your blessing to do so." "You have it," Thengel said, "and more than that." He rose and went to a chest in the corner. He opened it and drew out a sword in a scabbard. "Take this," he said, "a sword of Rohan forged in Edoras. Let it remind you of your time among us." Aragorn accepted the sword with both hands. He drew it partially from the scabbard. The blade was beautiful, etched with running horses. "My lord, this is too fine a gift. Take it," Thengel interrupted. "You have earned it and more." Aragorn bowed deeply. "Thank you, my lord. I will bear it with honour." They stood in silence for a moment. Then Thengel extended his hand. Aragorn clasped it. "Ride well, Thorongil," Thengel said. "May we meet again." "May we meet again," Aragorn echoed. He left Edoras 2 days later, early morning before most were awake. He did not like farewells. Grimbold and a few others from the Third Eord came to see him off. They shook his hand, gruff and uncomfortable. Rohirrim were not good with emotions. "Come back if you can," Grimbold said. "If I can," Aragorn promised. He rode south on Rohirrim. The horse was older now, but still strong. They had travelled many miles together. He would not leave the horse behind. Behind him, Medusel's golden roof gleamed in the morning sun. He left behind the plains of Rohan, the endless grass, the constant wind, the songs in the hall, the companionship of warriors. He rode south toward Gondor, toward the White City, toward a kingdom that did not know its king was coming. The journey from Rohan to Gondor took 3 weeks. Aragorn rode along the White Mountains' northern slopes. The mountains rose on his left, tall and forbidding. Snow covered the high peaks even in spring. The lower slopes were green with grass and scattered trees. He followed old roads, some paved, some just tracks. This was the border region between Rohan and Gondor. Farmers lived here in isolated steadings. They raised sheep on the mountain slopes, barley in the valleys. They were suspicious of strangers. Aragorn did not stop to talk. He bought supplies when needed and moved on. After a week he turned south through the passes. The mountains here were tall and cold. The pass climbed steeply. Rohirrim struggled with the altitude. The air grew thin, breathing became laboured. No snow lay deep on either side of the track. It was late spring, but winter still held the heights. The pass was narrow, winding between cliffs. Avalanche debris blocked the path in places, old snowslides from the winter. He had to dismount and lead Rohirrim carefully around them. The horse slipped on ice but did not fall. At the pass's summit he stopped to rest. The view was extraordinary. Behind him, to the north, the plains of Rohan stretched to the horizon, green and flat like a vast carpet. Ahead to the south, the valley of Anorion, greener still with forests and fields, and far in the distance, just visible through haze, a white shape against dark mountains, Minas Tirith, the White City. His breath caught in his throat. Even at this distance, it was beautiful. He stood looking at it for a long time. Then he began the descent. The southern side of the pass was less steep. The air warmed as he descended. Snow gave way to grass. Trees appeared. Pine at first, then oak and beech. He descended into the valley of Anorion. The land here was greener, warmer. It was a shock after Rohan and Eriador. Farmsteads dotted the countryside. Actual farms with cultivated fields, rows of barley and wheat, orchards of apple and pear, gardens with vegetables. He saw people working in the fields, cultivating, planting, weeding. The contrast with Eriador was stark. In Eriador, ruins and emptiness. Here, life and productivity. Villages appeared every few miles, small clusters of houses around a common well, maybe 30 or 40 people in each. They looked prosperous, well-fed. The further south he went, the more signs of civilization appeared. Roads were maintained, not crumbling. The paving stones were fitted tightly. Drainage ditches kept the roads from flooding. Milestones marked distances. Bridges crossed rivers, their stones solid. Not makeshift ferries or fords. Proper bridges with arches and parapets. Watchtowers stood on hilltops. Stone towers 2 or 3 stories tall, manned by soldiers who watched the roads. This was an organised kingdom, a functioning state. The difference from the north was overwhelming. Ahead, visible for many miles now, rose Minas Tirith, the White City. It stood against the eastern mountains, built into the side of a great hill. Actually not a hill, but a spur of the mountains themselves. A ridge of rock jutting westward into the plain. The city was built on and into this ridge. 7 levels rose one above another, each level surrounded by white walls. The walls gleamed in the sunlight. They were not painted white, but built of white stone, marble, or something like it, quarried from the mountains centuries ago. At the summit, the Tower of Ecthelion gleamed like a pale finger pointing at the sky. 300 feet tall, they said, topped with a banner that streamed in the wind. The white banner of Gondor with the white tree and 7 stars. Aragorn approached the city in late afternoon. He had ridden all day across the Pelennor fields. The Pelennor was the great field surrounding Minas Tirith. Farmland mostly intensively cultivated. It fed the city's population. The sun behind him cast long shadows across the fields. Workers were heading home after a day's labour. They walked in groups, carrying tools, talking. They glanced at him as he rode past but said nothing. A single traveller was not unusual. The road was busy with traffic even at this hour. Carts bringing goods to the city. Merchants, soldiers, craftsmen. The white walls glowed in the golden light of late afternoon. The shadow of the mountains to the east was beginning to creep across the plain, but the city itself was still sunlit. It looked like something from a dream, beautiful and strong and ancient. He passed through the gate on the first level, the Great Gate they called it. Massive doors of wood and iron bound with steel. They stood open during the day. At night they were closed and barred. Guards stood watch on either side. They wore the uniform of Gondor, black surcoats over mail, silver helmets. They carried spears and wore swords, and they watched everyone entering but did not stop him. A single traveller was no threat. The streets inside were paved with stone, not cobbles but fitted blocks. The paving was old but well maintained. Buildings rose 3 and 4 stories high on either side. Stone buildings with tile roofs. Some were shops on the ground floor, residences above. Others were warehouses or workshops. The noise was overwhelming after weeks in the wild. Voices calling from shop to shop. Carts rattling on stone streets. Horses' hooves clopping. Hammers ringing from smithies. The clang of metal on metal, children shouting, dogs barking. 1,000 sounds layered together. People filled the streets. More people than he had seen in years. Merchants in fine clothing, soldiers in armour, craftsmen in leather aprons, women carrying baskets, and children running between the adults, beggars sitting against walls, thieves probably, though they looked like ordinary folk. The crowds, the noise, the sheer density of humanity. It was overwhelming after the silences of ranging. He felt claustrophobic, pressed in, but also strangely energised. This was a living city, vibrant, busy, productive. He made his way up through the levels. Each level was reached by a ramp or gate. The gates were staggered, not aligned, so the route zigzagged up the hill. This was defensive design. An attacker could not simply charge straight up. Each level was smaller than the one below, so the city rose like a great pyramid, or a wedding cake, tier upon tier. Rohirrim climbed steadily, its hooves clopping on stone. The climb was steep. The horse's flanks heaved. At each level, or the character changed slightly. The first level was warehouses and inns, places for travellers and merchants. The second level held craftsmen, smiths, carpenters, stonemasons. The ring of hammers was constant here. Sparks flew from forges. The smell of hot metal and coal smoke filled the air. The third level held markets where food and goods were sold. Stalls lined the streets. Vendors called out their wares: fresh bread, fish, vegetables, cloth, tools. The variety was astounding. He had forgotten such plenty existed. The fourth level held more residences and several temples. The temples were dedicated to no gods. The Númenóreans had not worshipped gods in the traditional sense, but these were places of contemplation, shrines to the memory of Númenor, to the valour who had drowned it. The fifth level held noble houses, the homes of Gondor's aristocracy. Large buildings of white stone with private courtyards, gardens visible behind walls, fountains playing, wealth displayed tastefully but unmistakably. The sixth level held the barracks and armories. This was where the city's garrison lived. Long buildings surrounding training yards. Soldiers drilled in the yards even now. The commands of sergeants echoed off stone walls. The seventh level, the highest, held the citadel. The citadel was the innermost fortress, a keep within the city, surrounded by its own wall. Aragorn did not go that high on his first day. At the sixth level he found barracks for soldiers. He stabled Rohirrim in the stables there. A groom took the horse, promising good care. Aragorn paid for a week's stabling with a silver coin. But then he found the barracks and asked to speak with the captain. He was taken to a stone room lit by narrow windows. Afternoon light slanted across a desk covered in papers. A man in armour sat behind the desk. He looked up as Aragorn entered. The captain was middle-aged, perhaps 45. His hair was dark, greying at the temples. His face was lined, weathered by sun and wind. A soldier's face. "Yes," he said. His tone was brusque but not unkind. Busy men had little time for pleasantries. Aragorn introduced himself as Thorongil, the same name he had used in Rohan. He offered his sword to Gondor. He said he had served in Rohan and the north. He said he wished to serve Gondor now. The captain looked him over. Tall, lean, weathered, grey eyes that missed nothing. Armed with a good sword, a bow, a knife. Travel-worn but not ragged. He carried himself like a soldier. No, more than that, like an officer. "We need men," the captain said. "Can you fight?" "Yes." "Can you follow orders?" "Yes." "Can you read and write?" That was an unusual question. Most soldiers could not. "Yes," Aragorn said. The captain's eyebrows rose. An educated man offering to serve as a common soldier. Unusual, but not unheard of. Men fled debts, crimes, unhappy marriages. The army asked few questions. "You're accepted," the captain said. "Report to the 3rd Company, 2nd Battalion, ask for Captain Mardil." "Thank you," Aragorn said. He turned to go. "Thorongil," the captain called after him. Aragorn turned back. "What are you running from?" A direct question. Aragorn smiled faintly. "Nothing, sir." "I'm running towards something," the captain grunted. "We'll see." Dismissed. Aragorn found the 3rd Company. He was assigned a bunk in the barracks. He stowed his gear in the chest at the foot of the bunk. Then he sat down, exhausted. The journey had been long, but he was here, in Gondor, in the city of his fathers. Life in Minas Tirith was different from anything he had known. The city was massive, home to tens of thousands. Perhaps 30,000 people lived within its walls. Another 20,000 in the villages of the Pelennor. More people than lived in all of Eriador. Soldiers were numerous, organised into companies and battalions. The garrison of Minas Tirith numbered perhaps 3,000. Divided into companies of 100 men. Divided into battalions of 10 companies, each with its own officers, its own banners, its own traditions. The organisation was complex, hierarchical, nothing like the loose bands of rangers, or even the Eords of Rohan. This was military discipline taken to its highest form. Routine was strict. Morning assembly in the courtyard of the barracks. Dawn had barely broken. The sky was grey, the air cold. Companies formed up in ranks, officers inspected, inspection of weapons and armour. Swords had to be sharp, oiled, armour had to be clean, free of rust. Boots had to be polished, belts had to be buckled correctly. Everything had to be regulation. Failure meant extra duties. Cleaning latrines, scrubbing floors, polishing armour for others, so men took inspection seriously. Then drills. The courtyard was paved stone surrounded by high walls. Companies practiced formations there, shield walls. How to lock shields together into an impenetrable barrier, each man overlapping the man to his left. Shields angled to deflect blows, spears thrust over and between the shields, spear hedges, how to present a wall of spear points to charging enemies. First rank kneeling, spears braced against the ground. Second rank standing, spears levelled. Third rank overhead, ready to thrust down. The manoeuvres of disciplined infantry. Advance in step, maintaining formation. Wheel left or right without breaking ranks. Form square against cavalry. Form wedge to break enemy lines. Gondor's strength was not in cavalry like Rohan's. Gondor had cavalry, but not many. The terrain around Minas Tirith favoured infantry. Gondor's strength was in heavy infantry and fortifications, walls and disciplined soldiers. That was how Gondor had held its borders for 3,000 years. Soldiers wore steel plate armour, much heavier than what the Rohirrim wore. Cuirass, pauldrons, vambraces, greaves. A full harness weighed 50 pounds. Aragorn trained in this armour. It was hot, uncomfortable. The metal absorbed the sun's heat. Inside, he baked. Sweat ran down his back, his chest, his face. It stung his eyes. His tunic under the armour soaked through. It chafed his skin, rubbing raw spots on his shoulders and hips. But it offered protection nothing else could match. Arrows bounced off it. Swords couldn't cut through it. You could survive blows that would kill an unarmoured man. worth the discomfort. Midday meals were taken in a common hall. Long tables served hundreds at once. The hall was dim, lit by high windows. In summer it was stifling. In winter barely warm despite the fires. The food was served from a kitchen at one end. Soldiers lined up, received their portions, sat and ate. Bread, stew, sometimes meat. The bread was white wheat bread, softer than the rye bread of Rohan. The stew was usually mutton or beef with vegetables. Carrots, onions, turnips, beans. The meat was sometimes fresh, more often salted. Sometimes there was fish instead, brought from the Anduin. The food was better than ranger fare, though bland. Salt, pepper, nothing more. Gondorians did not favour spices, or perhaps spices were expensive. Either way, the food was nourishing but dull. Afternoons brought watch duty or patrols. Watch duty meant standing at attention on the walls. 4-hour shifts staring at the horizon. The walls of Minas Tirith were thick, wide enough to walk on, 30 feet wide at the base, tapering to 20 at the top. Battlements ran along the outer edge, crenellations to shoot through, merlons for cover. The view from the walls was extraordinary. To the west, the Pelennor fields stretched for miles, green and gold with crops. The river Anduin flowed past to the west, wide and slow. It gleamed silver in the sunlight. Beyond the river, the forests of Ithilien, dark green, dense, beautiful but dangerous. Orcs hid there. To the east, the mountains of shadow loomed dark. The Efelduth, the range that encircled Mordor, black and jagged against the sky. Snow never touched their peaks, not because they were too low, but because something about them repelled snow. Some evil in the stone itself. Somewhere beyond those mountains lay Mordor, Barad-dûr, the Dark Tower, the Eye of Sauron searching the lands. The thought was never far from any soldier's mind. They were here to hold the line against that darkness, to keep it from spreading west. Watch duty was tedious. 4 hours of standing still, scanning the horizon for movement, watching for smoke, for dust clouds, for flashes of light, any sign of enemy activity. Most shifts passed without incident, but you had to stay alert. Boredom was dangerous. Let your attention wander, and you might miss the warning that saved the city. Patrols went out into the Pelennor to check roads and outposts. These patrols were nothing like ranging in Eriador. Groups of 20 men marching in formation, armour clanking with each step, the ring of metal on stone, orders called by sergeants, left face, forward march, halt, everything formal, organised, loud. Aragorn found it stifling at first. Rangers moved in silence. This was the opposite, announcing your presence to everyone within a mile. But he understood its purpose. These patrols were not scouts. They were a show of force, a message to potential enemies. Gondor is strong, Gondor is watchful. Discipline kept armies together. Discipline allowed hundreds of men to act as one. That was Gondor's strength. Not individual skill, though soldiers were skilled, but the ability to coordinate, to manoeuvre masses of men precisely, to hold formations under fire, to advance into danger without breaking. That required discipline. Evenings were free time after the evening meal. Soldiers drank in taverns on the lower levels. They gambled with dice or cards. They visited bathhouses where hot water soothed aching muscles. The bathhouses were a Númenórean tradition. Public baths heated by furnaces, steam rooms and cold plunges. Aragorn went sometimes. The hot water was wonderful after hours in armour. It eased the aches from his shoulders and back, washed away the sweat and grime. But the bathhouses were crowded, noisy, full of naked men joking and splashing. He preferred quieter pursuits. More often he walked the city alone, exploring, learning its streets and levels. He explored each level systematically. The first level held the main gates and warehouses. Massive buildings for storing grain, oil, wine. The city's reserves in case of siege. Enough to feed the population for a year, they said. The second level held craftsmen, smiths, carpenters, stonemasons. Their workshops lined the streets, open to the air so smoke could escape. He watched them work, smiths heating metal in forges, hammering it into shape, carpenters planing wood, fitting joints, masons carving stone with chisels. The skill was impressive. These were masters of their crafts. The third level held markets where food and goods were sold. He wandered the market stalls, fresh bread from a dozen bakeries, each claiming theirs was best. Fish from the Anduin, displayed on beds of ice. Vegetables from the Pelennor, carrots, cabbages, onions, lettuce. Fruit from the southern provinces, apples, pears, grapes, even oranges. Cloth from Dol Amroth, fine and expensive. Tools and weapons from local smiths. Pottery, baskets, rope, leather goods, everything you could need. The variety was astounding, and he had forgotten such plenty existed. The fourth level held more residences and several temples. The temples were quiet places, cool stone interiors, dim and peaceful. He entered one once. It was empty except for an old man sitting in meditation. The walls were carved with stars and ships, symbols of Numenor, of the island that sank. He sat for a while in the silence. It was restful. The fifth level held noble houses. He didn't enter these. They were private, guarded, but he could see their courtyards through gates, gardens with fountains and flowering trees, wealth and privilege. The sixth level held the barracks and armories. He spent most of his time here. This was where soldiers lived, where he lived. The seventh level, the citadel, was restricted. Only those with business there could enter. But one evening he talked his way past the guards, said he had a message for a captain. He didn't, but the guards were lazy. They waved him through. He climbed to the highest level. The citadel courtyard spread before him, paved with white stone, fountains playing in the corners, and in the centre, before the Tower of Ecthelion, the white tree. It stood in a courtyard behind a low fence. The tree was dead, completely dead. Its trunk was pale, almost white. Its branches were bare, no leaves, buds. They reached upward like skeletal fingers. It had been dead for centuries, since the last king died. Still it was not removed. Prophecy said it would bloom again when the king returned. So it stood, a dead monument to a vanished line. Aragorn approached the fence. He stood looking at the tree for a long time. This was the symbol of his line, the white tree of Gondor, descended from the white tree of Numenor, which had been descended from Telperion, one of the two trees of Valinor, a lineage stretching back to the beginning of the world, and it was dead, like his line, like the king's, dead for 1,000 years. He reached out and touched one of the dead branches. The wood was hard, petrified, cold to the touch. Would it ever bloom again? Would he ever stand here as king? It seemed impossible. He was just a soldier, a wanderer with a secret name. The tree felt like an omen, like his hopes, dead and dry. He left the citadel before the guards noticed he didn't belong, but he returned often in his mind. The dead tree haunted him. Winter came to Minas Tirith. Cold rain fell for weeks. The stone streets became slick. Water ran down the ramps between levels in streams. The city's drainage was excellent, channeling water into cisterns and sewers. Gondorian engineering at its finest. Even in rain, the streets did not flood, but everything was wet and cold. Stone walls wept with the moisture. Armour rusted, if not oiled constantly. Soldiers spent hours each week cleaning and oiling their gear. Rust was the enemy of steel. Patrols continued in the rain. Soldiers marched through mud, their boots heavy with it. The roads became quagmires. Each step was a struggle. Visibility was poor. Mist hung over the Pelennor. You couldn't see 100 yards. Watch duty in the rain was miserable. Standing motionless while water ran down your neck, under your armour, soaking your clothes, chilling you to the bone. 4 hours felt like an eternity. Your hands went numb on your spear. Your feet went numb in your boots. You shivered uncontrollably. Aragorn endured it without complaint. All soldiers endured it. Complaining changed nothing. This was the job. Guard the city, rain or shine. He served in Gondor for 3 years before anyone noticed him particularly. He was competent but not flashy. He followed orders. He did his duty. He helped younger soldiers learn their drills. He never shirked, never complained. But he didn't stand out. He was just another soldier, one of thousands. But gradually his skills became apparent. In patrols into Ithilien, he proved an excellent tracker. He could read signs others missed. A broken twig, a disturbed stone, a faint print. He could tell how many orcs had passed and when, whether they were carrying burdens, whether they were fleeing or hunting. His experience as a ranger served him well. He understood tactics, where enemies would position ambushes, how to approach a fortification, when to fight and when to withdraw. He could read terrain and predict enemy movement. Where water sources were, where good defensive positions lay, where supply lines were vulnerable. He was promoted to sergeant by his 3rd year. He was given command of a squad, 10 men under his leadership. He trained them well, drilled them hard but fairly, made sure they maintained their gear, made sure they watched each other's backs. His squad performed excellently, the lowest casualty rate in the company, the highest marks in inspections, then to captain after 5 years. Now he led a company, 100 men, real responsibility. He was consulted on planning, asked his opinion on defence strategies. By 2968, 10 years into his service, he was well known in the garrison. Ecthelion II, steward of Gondor, took notice of him. Word had reached the steward of this captain Thorongil. Exceptional soldier, brilliant tactician, mysterious past. Ecthelion was curious. The steward was a stern man, intelligent and proud. In his 60s now, grey-haired but vigorous, sharp-eyed, missing nothing. He ruled Gondor in the absence of kings. The line of kings had failed nearly 1,000 years ago. The last king, Eärnur, had ridden to Minas Morgul and never returned. The stewards had held power since then, ruling well, but always as regents, always waiting for a king who would never come. Ecthelion summoned Thorongil to the citadel. Aragorn climbed to the 7th level. He was escorted through halls of white stone. Tapestries hung on the walls depicting ancient battles, the War of the Last Alliance, the founding of Gondor, great deeds of the past. They entered a high chamber overlooking the city. Windows opened onto balconies. The view stretched for miles. Ecthelion sat in a chair before a large desk. Maps covered the desk, documents in neat piles. The work of ruling never ended. He looked up as Aragorn entered. His eyes were grey, piercing. They studied Aragorn for a long moment. "Captain Thorongil," he said, "I've heard much about you." "My Lord Steward," Aragorn said, bowing. "Sit." Aragorn sat in a chair before the desk. "You have served Gondor well," Ecthelion said. "Better than many born to this land." "Thank you." "My lord, where are you from?" The question Aragorn had been dreading. "The north, my lord." "That is vague. Which part of the north?" "Eriador, my lord, the lands around the Shire." "And before you came to Gondor?" "I served in Rohan for several years." "Why did you leave?" Aragorn chose his words carefully. "I wish to see more of Middle-earth, my lord, to serve where the need was greatest." And And you believe the need is greatest here? Yes, my lord. Gondor stands against Mordor. If Gondor falls, all the West falls. Ecthelion nodded slowly. That was the right answer. What is your lineage? He asked. Another dangerous question. I am Dúnedain, my lord, of the north. The Dúnedain are a noble line, Ecthelion said, descended from Númenor, as are the people of Gondor. Yes. My lord? Are you of chieftain's blood? Aragorn hesitated. He could not lie. I am, my lord. Ecthelion's eyes narrowed. Then why do you serve as a common soldier? Because I have no kingdom to rule, my lord. The North Kingdom fell long ago, and you seek no restoration. That is not for me to say, my lord. I serve where I can. Ecthelion studied him for a long time. He saw something in this Thorongil, something noble, kingly even, the bearing, the eyes, the voice. This was no common man, but Ecthelion was also proud. His family had ruled Gondor for 1,000 years. The stewards were noble, descended from Húrin of Emin Arnon. They had held the realm together through wars and plagues. They did not need kings. If Thorongil was indeed of royal blood, that could be problematic, but he had no proof. And Thorongil served loyally. That was what mattered. Very well, Ecthelion said. Keep your secrets, Captain. I will not pry further. Thank you, my lord. But I have a task for you. My lord? I wish to reorganize the defences of Ithilien. The orcs grow bolder. We need better intelligence on their movements. You will lead a company into Ithilien, establish outposts, train scouts, provide regular reports. This is important work and dangerous. Do you accept? I do, my lord. Gladly. Ecthelion smiled faintly. Good. You will have whatever resources you need. He paused. Gondor is fortunate to have you, Thorongil, wherever you truly come from. Aragorn bowed. He had been tested and passed. Ecthelion gave him greater responsibilities after that. Command of larger forces. Planning of defences along the Anduin. Consultation on strategy for the wars in the east. Aragorn was careful. He advised but did not presume. He knew his place as Thorongil, a foreign soldier. He could not reveal himself. Not yet. Perhaps not ever. The time was not right. Gondor was not ready for a king, and he was not ready to be king. Years continued in this manner. Service to Gondor, drills and patrols, strategy sessions in the Citadel, the slow grind of military life, building his reputation, learning Gondor from within, always watching east toward the shadow, waiting for the day when he would be needed. In the year 2980, Aragorn was 49 years old, though he looked perhaps 30. The blood of Númenor gave him slow aging. He had served Gondor faithfully for 16 years, longer than any other posting. He had risen high in Ecthelion's esteem. The steward consulted him on all major decisions, trusted him above many native-born Gondorians. But Aragorn knew he could not remain forever. His identity would eventually be discovered. Someone would recognize the signs, the grey eyes of the Dúnedain, the nobility of bearing, the ancient sword he sometimes carried, or he would grow old and die without ever claiming his heritage. Neither outcome was acceptable. He decided to perform one great service before departing, something that would help Gondor long after he was gone, something that would be remembered. To the south lay Umbar. Umbar was a great natural harbour on the coast, a bay surrounded by hills, perfect for ships. It had been part of Gondor once, in the Second Age. Founded by Númenorian colonists, one of their greatest cities, but it had fallen into the hands of rebels centuries ago. The Corsairs controlled it now. The Corsairs were descendants of the King's Men, the faction of Númenor that had rebelled against the Valar. After Númenor sank, some had fled to Middle-earth. They had established strongholds in Umbar and along the southern coasts. They hated Gondor, which was founded by the faithful, old grudges from the Second Age still burning. The Corsairs raided Gondor's coasts constantly. Their black ships brought fire and death to coastal villages. They burned farms, took slaves, looted and fled. Gondor's navy was weak, no match for the Corsairs' fleet. The haven of Umbar sheltered hundreds of Corsair ships. As long as Umbar stood strong, the raids would continue. Like Gondor could not strike back effectively. The distance was too great, the defences too strong, or so everyone believed. Aragorn proposed a bold plan to Ecthelion. Take a small force south by land, avoid the coastal fortifications, steal ships at one of Gondor's southern ports, sail to Umbar by night, attack the harbour, burn the Corsair fleet at anchor, then escape overland. It was dangerous, possibly suicidal. 50 men against an entire city. But if they succeeded, Gondor's coasts would be safe for a generation. Worth the risk. Ecthelion listened without expression. His face was a mask, but his eyes glittered. He saw the possibilities. The Corsairs had grown arrogant, careless. They believed themselves untouchable. A sudden strike might work. If you fail, Ecthelion said slowly, Gondor will disavow you. We cannot afford war with Umbar. I understand, my lord. If you're captured, you will be on your own. I understand. And if you succeed, the glory will be Gondor's, but the risk is yours. Aragorn smiled faintly. I seek no glory, my lord, only to serve. Ecthelion studied him. This man was extraordinary, noble beyond measure, brave beyond reason. Who was he really? The question haunted Ecthelion, but he would never know. You have my permission, Ecthelion said finally. Choose your men wisely. Aragorn bowed and departed. He spent 2 weeks selecting volunteers. 50 men, no more. All experienced soldiers, all unmarried, without families. If they died, they would leave no widows, no orphans. He explained the mission plainly. The dangers, the odds, the likelihood of death. Many volunteered anyway. For glory, for adventure, for love of Gondor. He chose the best. Men he had fought beside, men he trusted. They prepared in secret, gathered supplies, weapons, rope, oil, torches, studied maps of the southern coasts, planned routes, escape paths, contingencies. In the summer of 2980, they left Minas Tirith quietly. No fanfare, no ceremonies, just 50 men slipping out at dawn. They travelled south through the province of Lebenin. Lebenin was Gondor's richest province. Farmland watered by 5 rivers. The land was green, fertile, heavily populated. They moved quickly, not stopping in villages, travelling in small groups to avoid attention. Farmland gave way to coastal plains as they continued south. The air grew warmer, more humid. The smell of the sea reached them, salt and fish and seaweed. They reached Pelargir after 2 weeks. Pelargir was Gondor's river port on the Anduin near its mouth. A large city busy with trade. Ships came up the Anduin from the sea. Ships sailed down from Minas Tirith. Goods flowed through Pelargir to all parts of Gondor. Aragorn had sent word ahead through secret channels. 3 small ships waited at a discreet dock. The ships were fishing vessels, not warships, but they were fast and handled well. 40 feet long, single-masted. Crews of 6 could sail them. The captains were loyal Gondorians, paid well for their silence. Aragorn's men boarded at night. 50 men on 3 ships, cramped but manageable. They set sail before dawn, down the Anduin toward the sea. Aragorn's men were not sailors. Most had never been on a ship before. The motion made them sick. Men leaned over the rails, vomiting. The sailors laughed, but not unkindly. Everyone got sick their first time. The journey down the Anduin to the sea took 5 days. The river was wide and slow here, half a mile across. Its banks were lined with marsh and forest. Few settlements. This was the border region, dangerous. Orcs from Mordor sometimes crossed here. They saw no enemies, just empty landscapes slipping past. The mouth of the Anduin opened into the Bay of Belfalis, open ocean. The ships entered the bay and turned south along the coast of Harondor, the disputed lands between Gondor and Harad. Empty beaches stretched for miles, rocky cliffs rising from the water. No ports, no settlements. Desolate. They sailed at night to avoid detection. By day they anchored in hidden coves. The men rested on rocky beaches. There was no shade, no shelter. The sun was brutal. They ate dried food from their packs and rationed water. Water was precious. They had barrels on the ships, but it had to last. The sun was hot, hotter than in Gondor. The southern latitudes baked under its glare. Men from Minas Tirith were not accustomed to such heat. They burned despite precautions. Skin peeled from noses and shoulders. Lips cracked and bled. The nights were better. Cool breezes came off the ocean. Stars blazed overhead. Different stars than in the north. The constellations were shifted, some new, some missing. After 2 weeks of coastal sailing, they reached the Cape of Umbar, a great headland jutting into the sea. Rocky, barren, forbidding. The haven lay beyond the cape on the southern side. A natural harbour surrounded by hills. They waited offshore until nightfall. The ships rocked gently on the swells. Men checked their weapons for the 100th time, sharpened swords, strung bows, prepared torches and oil. No one spoke much. Everyone knew what was coming. Some would not survive the night. As the sun set, they unfurled the sails and rounded the cape. The haven of Umbar opened before them. It was vast, perhaps 2 miles across. Hills surrounded it on 3 sides like a horseshoe. The city of Umbar spread along the northern shore. Lights twinkled in windows. Torches burned along the waterfront. Even at night, the city was alive with activity. In the harbour, dozens of ships lay at anchor. Corsair ships. Long, sleek vessels built for speed. Black hulls, black sails furled on their masts. 50 ships at least, perhaps more. The entire Corsair fleet gathered in one place. Aragorn's 3 small ships moved silently between them. Their sails were dark, their hulls unmarked. In the darkness they looked like fishing boats, nothing to draw attention. The Corsairs did not expect an attack. Why would they? Gondor had no navy here, no force capable of striking Umbar. The Corsairs felt safe, invulnerable. They had no watch set, no guards on the ships. The crews were ashore, drinking in taverns, sleeping in their beds, confident in their security. Aragorn's ships glided between the anchored vessels. His men carried torches wrapped in cloth soaked in oil. They lit them using shielded lanterns. The torches flared to life. On Aragorn's signal, they threw them. The torches arced through the night air. They landed on the Corsair ships, on tarred decks, on furled sails, on coiled ropes. Fire caught immediately. Tar was extremely flammable. Flames spread rapidly from ship to ship. The Corsairs had anchored close together for protection. Now that worked against them. Fire leapt from vessel to vessel. Sails ignited like paper. Rigging burned and fell in flaming tangles. Masts became pillars of fire. The harbour became an inferno in minutes. Orange flames reached toward the sky. Smoke billowed in great black clouds. Men shouted on shore. Alarm bells rang in the city. People ran toward the waterfront, but it was too late. The Corsair fleet burned. Aragorn's ships turned and fled the harbour. Behind them fire lit the night sky like a second sun. Smoke rose in a great column visible for miles. Screams and shouts echoed across the water. But no pursuit came. The Corsairs had no ships left to pursue with. Their entire fleet was burning. They could only watch in horror as their power went up in flames. Aragorn's ship sailed north through the darkness. By dawn, they were far up the coast, miles from Umbar. The men were exhausted but exhilarated. They had done it. Against all odds, they had succeeded. Gondor's greatest enemy had been dealt a devastating blow, but the mission was not over. Now came the hard part, getting home. Aragorn ordered the ships beached at a deserted cove. They ran the vessels up onto the sand, then they stripped them of anything useful: food, water, weapons, rope. Distributed the supplies among the men. Then they set fire to the ships. They could not sail back to Gondor. The Corsairs would be watching every ship now. Any vessel heading north would be stopped, searched. They had to travel overland through hostile territory. It was the only way. The ships burned on the beach as they marched inland. Behind them, smoke rose into the morning sky. Ahead lay hundreds of miles of enemy land. Harandor, controlled by Haradrim tribes and Corsair patrols. No friends, no shelter, no safety. Just empty wilderness and enemies. They had to cross it all on foot. Aragorn led them north through scrubland. The land was dry, rocky, covered in thorny bushes. Water was scarce. They travelled at night and rested during the heat of the day. Daylight travel would kill them. The heat was simply too intense. Even the natives avoided moving during midday. At night the temperature dropped. Not cool, but bearable. They could march for hours without collapsing. They navigated by the stars, keeping the North Star ahead of them, walking steadily, mile after mile. Water was rationed strictly. Each man carried a skin, refilled whenever they found a stream. Streams were rare. Sometimes days passed between water sources. They learned to recognize signs. Green vegetation in valleys indicated water underground. Birds circling meant water nearby. Animal tracks converging suggested a watering hole. They followed these signs desperately. Days blended into weeks, walking through empty land. Thorny scrub tearing at their clothes, sand working into their boots, rubbing their feet raw. Blisters formed, burst, formed again. Some men could barely walk. They limped along, supported by comrades. The heat by day was stifling even in shade. Yet they found shelter under rock overhangs, in the shadows of boulders, anywhere out of the direct sun. But the heat radiated from the rocks. The air shimmered. Breathing felt like inhaling fire. They lay still, conserving energy. Sleeping was difficult in the heat. Fitful, dozing at best. At night the cold was shocking after the day's heat. Desert regions changed temperature dramatically. The sun baked the earth during the day, but at night, with no clouds to trap heat, temperatures plummeted. Frost sometimes formed before dawn. They shivered in their cloaks, huddled together for warmth. The same men who'd been sweating hours before now shook with cold. They saw no one for the first 2 weeks. Just endless scrubland and rocky hills. No settlements, no travellers. The emptiness was eerie, as if they were the last people on Earth. Then they spotted riders in the distance, Haradrim scouts perhaps, or Corsair patrols searching for them. Aragorn led his men into a ravine, a dry riverbed cutting through the landscape. They pressed against the walls, silent and still. The riders passed above, unaware. Hoofbeats faded into the distance. The men breathed again. After that, they were more careful, sending scouts ahead to check for enemies, avoiding high ground where they might be silhouetted, moving in gullies and dry riverbeds where possible. Invisible ghosts crossing hostile land. Food ran low. They had carried provisions for 4 weeks, but the journey was taking longer. The terrain was harder than expected. The heat slowed them. Injured men slowed them. They had to hunt. But game was scarce in this arid land. They caught rabbits occasionally, shot birds with arrows when they could. Once they killed a gazelle. It was a lucky shot at long range. The meat fed them for 3 days. Tough, stringy meat, but nourishing. They ate every scrap, even the organs. Nothing was wasted. But hunting meant delays. Time spent tracking, stalking, butchering. Time they could have been moving north. Every day in Harandor was another day of danger. Hunger became a constant companion. Stomachs cramped and growled. Men grew thin, their faces gaunt, cheeks hollowed, eyes sunken. Belts had to be cinched tighter. Armour hung loose on shrinking frames. But they continued, one foot in front of the other. North, always north, toward Gondor, toward safety. Fatigue pulled at their limbs. Muscles ached constantly. And feet were masses of blisters and calluses. Every step was pain. But stopping meant death. So they walked. After 6 weeks, they crossed into Gondor's southern provinces. The land improved slightly. More water, more vegetation. Thorny scrub gave way to grass. They found streams more regularly. Small farms appeared, isolated and widely scattered. Shepherds watching flocks in the hills. Farmers tending small plots of irrigated land. Signs of civilization. But Aragorn wanted no questions about where they had been. A company of armed men appearing from the south would raise alarms, suspicions. Someone might connect them to the raid on Umbar. Gondor had officially had nothing to do with that. Officially, it had been pirates or rebels, not Gondor's soldiers. Ecthelion had been clear. If they were caught, Gondor would disavow them. So they avoided settlements, skirted around farms, travelled at night and hid during the day, ghost passing through their own land. Finally, after nearly 2 months of walking, they reached Pelagia. They approached from the east, avoiding the main roads. They entered the city in small groups over several days, not as a company but as individual travellers. Nothing to draw attention. The men were exhausted, sunburned, half-starved, but all 50 had survived. Not one lost. Against all odds, they had made it. Aragorn sent a message to Minas Tirith, coded, cryptic. The task is complete. The bird has flown. Ecthelion would understand, but he did not return to the city himself. Instead, he disappeared. Thorongil simply vanished. He left Gondor without explanation, without farewells. One day he was there, the next he was gone. Ecthelion was furious when he learned. He had trusted Thorongil, valued him above all other captains, given him responsibilities normally reserved for nobles, and Thorongil had simply left. No explanation, no courtesy. Just gone. But the deed was done. The Corsair fleet was destroyed. Gondor's southern coast was safe for the first time in centuries. Villages rebuilt without fear of raids. Fishing boats put out without armed escorts. Children played on beaches that had been war zones. The people did not know who to thank. Rumours spoke of a mysterious captain who had led the raid, but his name was lost. Just Thorongil, the Eagle of the Star, who had come from nowhere and returned to nowhere, a legend. Aragorn's work in Gondor was complete. He had learned what he needed, and he had proven himself as a leader. He had struck a blow that would be remembered, but he could not stay. His path led elsewhere now, east into lands unknown, to see what the enemy was building, to understand the full scope of the coming darkness. He went north and east toward lands few Gondorians had ever seen, toward Rhûn and Harad, toward mysteries and dangers, toward the next chapter of his long journey. Subscribe to the Lore Keeper for more deep dives into Lord of the Rings history. New lore for sleep every week.